Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is very apt as this year we have a huge influx of HDB coming to MOP, almost double that of the last year at 13 over 1,000. If you are an HDB owner who's reaching your MOP or you have just crossed it, chances are this question has already crossed your mind. Should I upgrade now or should I wait? And if you're feeling stuck, confused or even a bit pressured by the market noise, you're not alone. Some people are telling you to rush and upgrade before prices go higher. Others are telling you to wait because the market feels uncertain. And somewhere in between, you're trying to make a big financial decision that affects your lifestyle, your cash flow, and your long-term plans. So in this video, I'm not here to tell you that everyone must upgrade, and I'm definitely not here to push you into making a decision before you're ready. I've worked with many HDB owners at this exact stage. Some upgraded immediately, some waited, and some chose not to upgrade at all. And the right decision was different for every one of them. So instead, I want to walk you through what reaching MOP really unlocks for you by assessing unlocked sales proceeds and income levels for 3 different categories and see which is more applicable to your case. And what it means to save and wait versus upgrade now. And the real options, you have not just the popular ones, whether to stay put and do nothing, or also upgrade to a more bigger or central HDB, upgrade to a new EC, or upgrade to a private. And most importantly, how to think about upgrading in a way that fits your life stage, finances, and timeline. So before we even talk about whether you should upgrade, the first thing to assess when your HDB reaches MOP is this: how much value can you actually unlock from your current home? Because that number will determine what options are realistically available to you. Now, everyone's situation is different, so for illustration purposes, I'm going to use simple realistic figures just to demonstrate the concept. This is not a one-size-fits-all calculation. So let's assume you and your partner purchased a BTO 5 years ago at 400,000. Today, after reaching MOP, the indicative market value is around 800,000. Your outstanding loan is 264,000. And over the past 5 years, your combined CPF used, including accrued interest, is about 200,000. And you still have about 80,000 in your OA combined. So if you sell your flat at 800,000, you repay the outstanding loan, your CPF used plus accrued interest is refunded back into your CPF. And after accounting for these, your estimated net cash proceeds could be somewhere around 320,000. Again, this is a simplified illustration to make the discussion easier to follow. So after selling your MOP flat, you're potentially looking at 320,000 in cash proceeds and also 200,000 back into your CPF, plus your existing 80,000 CPF OA. That gives you 320,000 cash and then another 280k CPF. Now the real question becomes, what can you actually do with this combination of cash and CPF, and how do different upgrade paths affect your risk, cash flow, and lifestyle? That's what we'll break down next. So now once you understand how much cash and CPF you can potentially unlock, the next step is to contextualize it against your income and risk profile. To make this easier, I'm going to break this down into 3 broad categories. This is not to label anyone, but to help you see which planning lens may apply to you. Of course, everyone's situation is different. Some households may have more moderate income but very strong cash and CPF savings, or higher income but heavier commitments. So think of these categories as guides, not rigid boxes. So first we have Cat A, which typically includes households who are more cash flow sensitive, more risk averse, and also prefer stability over stretching. They usually want to stay put or upgrade without increasing financial stress. So let's assume a couple both around 35-year-old and a combined income of about 10,000, so about 5k each, existing car loan of about $1,200. So using these assumptions, based on current frameworks, the private property loan you can take is up to 900,000. And for a brand new EC, this is about 620,000. So HDB loan you can take is about 568,000. Again, these are illustrative figures for comparison. Now, if we combine this with what we unlocked earlier, which is the 320k cash and also the 280k CPF, that's roughly 600k in terms of total cash and CPF available. So realistically, this category may be looking at, let's say, private property of around 1.4 million range after factoring in your stamp duties. So for new EC, you can potentially look at this option as well. It's feasible with bridging or deferred payment schemes. So I've covered this in detail in my Coastal Cabana video, which I'll link below. So for HDB, with the loan that you can take plus your cash and CPF, you can purchase up to about 1.1 million range. So for Cat A households, the focus is usually keeping monthly commitments manageable, preserving your emergency buffers, and also upgrading without over-leveraging. There is no wrong choice here, only what fits your comfort level. Now, beyond purchase price, the next thing Cat A households really need to look at is monthly cash flow. So if you take a private property at, let's say, the 1.4 mil range, your monthly mortgage could easily be around 4K plus. So this example is for 1.2 million, so could be higher. So depending on the interest and also the loan structure, not forgetting other expenses like your maintenance fee and higher property tax. Now layer that together with an existing $1,200 car loan. So your daily household expenses, and also for many families, let's say with 1 or 2 children, suddenly your monthly commitments can start to feel quite tight. On top of that, in the 1.4 mil private segment, options are often much older developments or located further out from central areas. So whether this works or not depends on your family needs, your proximity to schools, commute time, and also your lifestyle preferences. So for many in this category, this starts to feel like a stretch unless you are extremely disciplined with savings or very comfortable tightening expenses. Now for brand new ECs, there's another practical consideration. Before you sell your HDB, you typically need to fund the initial down payment. So if your cash and CPF are still locked in your current flat, your ability to buy a new EC depends heavily on whether you already have strong buffer savings and also access to bridging or deferred payment schemes. This is why EC upgrading is often more sensitive to timing and other criteria, not just affordability. Because of all these factors, for households in Cat A, a resale HDB upgrade is often the safest and most balanced option. So at around 1.1 million or even lesser, you could potentially move into a more central location or upgrade to a larger unit such as a 5-room flat or even an executive apartment, all while keeping your monthly cash flow comfortable and sustainable. And there's nothing lesser about this choice. A good upgrade is not about stretching to the maximum. It's about choosing something you can live with peacefully for the long term. At the 1.1 million price point for HDB, the monthly installment at 2,200 for Cat A will be less stressed depending on whether you have other financial commitments. So next we have Cat B, what I call the comfortable but cautious group. These are families or couples who can upgrade but only with proper planning. Typically, they have a good balance of CPF and cash and are often dinks or have a child/children, which makes timing very important. For those with kids, selling first and then waiting for a new launch is usually not so practical. Most will need to sell and buy concurrently. Now for comparison purposes, let's assume the same age group for Cat A. So both in a couple are both 35 years old and their combined monthly income is around 16K, so about 8K each. And then your monthly car loan is also about 1,200. At this income level, brand new ECs are on the table since the income ceiling is 16K for ECs. But whether it works depends on deeper calculations, especially the initial down payment and whether a preferred bridging loan is required. If we look at the private property route, this profile can generally take a loan of about 1.6 million, possibly higher if bonuses are factored in. That puts the purchase price at around 2.1 million. With a sell-buy concurrent strategy and assuming total CPF and cash proceeds of around 600K as the previous example, most buyers at this level can usually cover the down payment and stamp duties without topping up extra cash. Realistically, at the 2.1 million range, you're looking at a 3-bedroom in the OCR or city fringe locations. This is also where personal priorities come in. Things like schools, proximity, commute, and lifestyle. So the monthly installment will be about 5,400. And once you factor in maintenance fee and property tax, you're looking at roughly about $6,000 in terms of expenses per month. So yes, this upgrade is absolutely feasible, but it really comes down to comfort level, other commitments, and whether you're happy committing that amount monthly to housing. As for upgrading to a larger HDB, that's usually not an issue at all for this category, so I won't dwell too much on that. So Cat B isn't about whether you can upgrade, it's about how safely and comfortably you do it. Lastly, we have Cat C, households with strong income and asset readiness. So we'll assume the same profile again, 35-year-olds Okay, same car loan of $1,200, but this time with a higher combined income of around 22,000. So about 11K each. At this level, the upgrade potential is very strong, and more importantly, the opportunity cost of waiting becomes much higher, especially if prices continue to move up. For this scenario, the maximum loan you can take comfortably is at 2.2 million, which means you can afford properties of up to 3 million. Assuming your total cash and CPF proceeds of 600K, as per previous examples, and you still have sufficient funds to top up for down payment. And at a 3 million price point, the choices become very attractive. You're no longer limited to entry price units. You can look at larger 3-bedrooms, 4-bedroom units, or even more central locations. Of course, the main considerations here are the higher down payment quantum and how much cash top-up you are comfortable with at this level, the higher monthly mortgage plus cost, say around 8K or even higher, after you add in your maintenance fees and stuff. So for this category, ECs are no longer relevant as the price point clearly exceeds the income ceiling. As for HDB, there's also not much to discuss. You can easily afford newer MOP flats, even in prime locations like Queenstown, at around 1.6 million. So ultimately for Cat C, the question isn't affordability, it's where you want to allocate your capital. Are you buying this home as a long-term asset that forms part of your wealth planning, or do you prefer to keep lower monthly mortgage commitments and deploy your money into other investments? And just to be clear, these three categories are benchmark examples meant for illustration and comparison. Your income might sit somewhere in between or even above these figures. So every household is different, and that's why the right decision always comes down to your comfort level, your priorities, and long-term strategy. So I would say at higher income levels, upgrading is no longer about can you buy or not? It's about what role this property plays in your overall wealth plan. Next, let's talk about the opportunity cost if you're considering an upgrade but are undecided between acting now versus waiting. Rather than going too far back, we'll focus on a recent and relevant 10-year window from 2015 to 2025. Okay, as we are only at the start of 2026 and data is still very limited for this year. So this gives us a clearer and more practical reference point. Okay. If we look at price trends and annualized growth rates over this period, HDB prices grew at an annual rate of about 5.27%. And for new ECs, the recorded the strongest growth at approximately 11.7% per annum. For new private condos, followed closely at around 11.5% per annum. And for landed properties, that's around 6.4% per annum. So resale private condos saw a total price increase of about 44.76%. So that translates to about 4.48% per annum. Now, while some of these double-digit annualized returns may look very attractive, it's important to recognize that this is over a full 10-year period. If we zoom into shorter time frames, the returns are not always linear and can vary significantly. So over the past decade, the market has also gone through multiple cooling measures, including additional layers being introduced over time, as well as major global events such as COVID-19 and other geopolitical and economic disruptions. Naturally, this has resulted in cycles of ups and downs rather than a linear growth. So the intention of this slide is not to project future returns, but to present a conservative, fact-based view on how different household types have performed over a meaningful time horizon. By looking at actual price trends and movements, you're able to better weigh the pros and cons, whether holding on or waiting before deciding your next move or planning ahead and upgrading earlier makes more sense for your situation. Ultimately, this helps you make a more informed, forward-looking decision rather than one based purely on sentiment or short-term market noise. So next, let's take a more conservative assumption. Instead of looking at double-digit growth, let's assume a 4% per annum price increase, which I think is a more realistic reflection based on recent years. Last year was relatively slower, so this is a grounded conservative benchmark. Now for simplicity, let's assume all housing types grow at the same rate of 4% per annum. What does this mean in actual dollar terms? So for HDB, if your MOP flat is around 800K, a 4% increase translates to a 32,000 increment. So for ECs, the 4% increase per year will translate to 64,000. And then for private, that translates to about $84,000 in a year. And for landed, that translates to about 160,000 increase at the same 4% growth rate. So when we put these numbers side by side, the key question becomes this: if you're planning to wait 1 or 2 years to save up, will that price increase materially affect what type of property you can upgrade to? Because while markets do move up and down, from a practical standpoint, we also need to ask, is it realistic for you to save 80,000 or even 100,000 or even 200,000 within a year? And if you're planning to upgrade in 2 to 3 years, these numbers compound and become even larger. On top of that, there are other factors to consider. For example, interest rate cuts, which could further support price growth and potentially widen the gap even more. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. For some, taking 2 to 3 years to save may make more sense, especially if that allows you to comfortably afford, say, a 2.1 million private property. But at the same time, it's also possible that 2 to 3 years later, that same 2.1 million may no longer buy you a 3-bedroom unit, but perhaps only a 2-bedroom plus study instead. That's where the opportunity cost of waiting comes in. Of course, if you're confident of income growth, bonuses, or higher savings capacity in the near future, waiting may actually give you more options, not fewer. Ultimately, everyone's situation is different, and this is why upgrade decisions should always be assessed on a case-by-case basis rather than using a one-size-fits-all approach. For those deciding whether to upgrade now or wait, let's walk through a practical example to quantify the opportunity cost involved. We'll use the same Cat B scenario. So a couple, both 35-year-old, each earning at around 8,000 per month. And then with an existing car loan of $1,200, which is not shown in this photo. Now let's assume they are looking at purchasing a property of around 2.2 million, which is a unit that they have already shortlisted and are really keen on. So based on their current position, their CPF OA 280k, and then their cash proceeds is 320k. Their total available funds will be 600k. So assuming they have not accumulated additional savings yet, there is a shortfall of approximately 87,000 in upfront funds required to proceed with the purchase. If they set aside $2,000 per month, okay, in terms of their savings, specifically towards this goal, it would take them about 2 years to close the gap. Okay, so at this point, they will have enough to down pay. However, the key consideration here is this: while they are saving over the next 2 years, the 2.2 million property today may no longer be priced at 2.2 million in the future due to inflationary pressures and overall market price movements. That said, this scenario could still remain feasible if income growth is expected. For example, through salary increment or bonuses over the next 1 or 2 years, which could increase their savings capacity and help offset the higher price. This highlights why upgrading decisions are rarely just about affordability today, but also about timing, price movement, and expected income trajectory. Now, let's take this one step further. Assuming the couple has a very specific requirement, they want to live within 1 km of a top primary school which they are alumni of because they intend for their kid to attend that school. As a result, their choices are highly restricted and they are only considering one particular property. And the purchase price of this property is 2.35 million. Based on their current income and the same CPF and cash position which we discussed earlier, they face a capital shortfall of approximately 245,000. Now let's assume they're extremely disciplined and they save 2,000 per month every month, which is $4,000 per month combined. At this rate, they would need about 5 years to accumulate enough capital to comfortably proceed with the purchase, assuming no salary increment during this period. They will be 40 years old by the time they are ready to buy. If their income remains unchanged, which is 8k per month each, their maximum loan quantum may reduce due to shorter remaining loan tenure. But there's another critical factor to consider. If we apply a conservative 4% annual price growth compounded over 5 years, the 2.35 million property today may no longer be priced at 2.35 million. In fact, it could be closer to 2.86 million. So while they may have saved enough to afford a 2.35 million, the property they are targeting is no longer priced at that level. This illustrates a key point. When location, school proximity are non-negotiables, waiting doesn't just delay the purchase, it can shift the goalpost entirely. And this is where the true opportunity cost of waiting comes into play. Ultimately, this isn't about whether waiting is right or wrong. It's about understanding that while you may be saving, the target property may also be moving. That's why upgrade decisions should be assessed early and realistically, and that's where planning early can make a meaningful difference. Now, of course, Everything we have discussed so far is based on hypothetical figures, used purely to illustrate how opportunity cost works over time. The more important question is, what does the current market situation tell us about whether this year is a good time to make a move? So let's ground this discussion in actual recent market data. If we look at HDB resale price growth, prices increased at about 2.9% in 2025. This is a relatively modest figure, and in fact, it represents the slowest growth since 2019 after the post-COVID surge. For private residential properties, prices rose at approximately 3.4% last year, which is also the slowest growth since 2020. While both segments experienced slower growth, it's important to note that private residential prices still outpaced HDB resale prices, even in a subdued market environment. At the same time, when we look ahead, the supply outlook for new private launches is becoming tighter. For the coming year, we are expecting only about 9,500 new private homes, excluding ECs, to be launched compared to around 11,500 units in 2025. This tightening of supply could potentially place upward pressure on private home prices, especially if demand remains resilient. So when we put all these factors together, slower growth in the HDB resale market, private prices still outperforming HDB even in a slow year, and a reduction in upcoming new launch supply, which could push prices up, it naturally leads to the question, is waiting really neutral, or does waiting carry its own set of implications? Ultimately, the decision to upgrade now or later isn't about timing the market perfectly. It's about understanding what waiting might cost you and whether making a move earlier gives you more options and flexibility rather than fewer. So beyond past performance, the next question to ask is, how are HDB prices likely to perform this year, and how does that affect the move you are considering? So one of the biggest factors influencing HDB price growth in 2026 is supply. First, we are seeing a sharp increase in the number of flats that are reaching MOP. In 2025, about 6,970 flats reached their minimum occupation period. In 2026, that number doubles to 13,400 flats. This means a much larger pool of resale flats become available in the market. On top of that, the government has also announced plans to launch around 19,000 BTO flats this year, which adds further supply and gives buyers more alternatives to the resale market. When we combine both factors, more MOP flats entering resale and a strong BTO pipeline, this is reasonable to expect HDB price growth to be more muted in 2026 compared to the past few years. That said, policy decisions still matter. If the government does move ahead to relax the 15-month wait-out period, this could bring more buyers back into the resale market and in turn provide some support to HDB prices. Now putting everything together, we are likely to see more resilient or decent price growth in the private residential market, supported by tighter new launch supply. While HDB price growth may be more subdued bearing major policy shifts, and even in a scenario where both HDB and private prices grow at a similar rate, as illustrated in our earlier hypothetical examples, the opportunity cost of waiting remains meaningful, especially for buyers looking to upgrade. What more now that we are anticipating a more muted HDB price growth? Now that we have looked at the market context and opportunity cost, let's step back and compare the four main options you can consider moving forward. There's no universally best choice. Each option comes with its own trade-offs, and the right decision depends on your priorities, your finances, and also your long-term plans. So the four options are either you stay put or do nothing, you continue to hold on to your current HDB, and then you upgrade to another HDB. This could mean moving to a larger flat or a better location. Upgrade to an EC, a hybrid option that offers condo-style living at a more accessible price point, but with certain eligibility conditions and restrictions. Upgrade to a private property. So this includes both condos and landed homes. In the next few slides, we'll walk you through the pros and cons of each option so you can better assess which pathway aligns with where you are today and where you want to be in the future. Let's start with option 1. You stay put and do nothing. So the pros is, one of the biggest advantage of this option is low stress and high stability. For many homeowners at this stage, the property may already be partially or almost fully paid up. With both parties working, mortgage servicing is often very manageable, especially in a relatively low loan-to-income environment supported by ongoing CPF contributions. So over the years, there is also likely to be significant accumulation of CPF and cash, which gives you strong financial flexibility. So in some cases, you may even have enough liquidity to fully redeem the loan if you choose to. This flexibility allows you to redirect direct your cash to other form of investments, and also to build up a larger emergency buffer, or simply enjoy greater peace of mind without over leveraging. For some households, that sense of control and optionality is extremely valuable. So for this, the trade-off, however, is asset stagnation. By holding on and doing nothing, your property may experience slower capital appreciation, which may be perfectly acceptable by some. There's also the issue of inflation erosion. Inflation rises every year, and assets such as ECs or private properties have historically done a better job at hedging against inflation over the long term. Staying in the same asset could gradually reduce your real purchasing power. Lastly, this option may delay wealth compounding. Real estate growth tends to be cumulative. The longer you sit on a lower growth asset, the more time you may need later to catch up if you eventually decide to upgrade. Again, this doesn't make the decision wrong. It simply means the opportunity cost is time. So who this option suits? This is more suitable for households with uncertain or volatile income. Okay, those anticipating short-term life changes, such as medical bills, childcare costs, or caregiver responsibilities. Individuals who prioritize liquidity and flexibility over asset growth in the near term. That said, if you're choosing to stay put intentionally, it's important to have a clear alternative plans. So if this property is not meant to be a core part of your retirement strategy, then there should be ideally other investments in place, whether financial assets or business ventures that can help you hedge against inflation and support long-term wealth and retirement plans. The second option is upgrading within the HDB market. One key advantage of this option is that it is lower risk and it's more familiar. You're staying within an asset class you already understand in terms of the pricing, the loan structures, CPF usage, and market behaviors. Upgrading to another HDB also allows for meaningful improvement in terms of your lifestyle without making a big financial leap. These improvements may include moving closer to your workplace to reduce commuting time, or near to your parents, or living within 1 km of a preferred school for your child, and also gaining larger internal space, better layout. So while these benefits may not always be reflected directly in returns, they can significantly enhance daily living quality and family convenience. In many cases, this option allows households to improve their housing conditions while still keeping monthly mortgage commitments manageable without needing substantial top-ups or aggressive leverage. So one major consideration is that upgrading to another HDB resets your MOP. This means committing to another 5-year holding period before you can reevaluate your next move. In terms of asset growth, historical price trends suggest that HDBs generally have more limited upside compared to ECs or private properties, especially over longer holding periods. There is also policy risk. As we have seen over the years, HDB policies can change and may affect future demand and exit strategies. For example, the introduction of the 15-month wait-out period for private property owners right-sizing to HDBs had a direct impact on resale demand. While policies are implemented for market stability, they do introduce an additional layer of uncertainty that buyers need to factor in. Who this option suits? Okay, this is suitable for families who are upgrading for space or functionality, such as for family expansion, caregiving for parents, or accommodate lifestyle needs. Conservative planners who want to improve their housing situation without taking on significantly higher financial commitments. And buyers with lower risk tolerance who value stability and predictability over maximizing asset growth. Overall, upgrading within the HDB market is often a practical, lifestyle-driven decision rather than a growth-driven one. The third option is to upgrade to a new EC. One of the biggest advantages of an EC is its lower entry price compared to the full private property, while still offering condo-style living such as facilities, security, and modern layouts. Historically, ECs have demonstrated strong upside potential, particularly after key milestones like after hitting the 5-year MOP period and also being fully privatized after 10 years. We have seen many past EC projects where owners experience significant capital appreciation upon hitting MOP, with some households recording substantial gains especially in well-located or well-timed launches. For example, 100 Palms, where a handful of owners exited with more than $1 million in profit. Importantly, these gains were not isolated cases, but observed across multiple developments. Because of this, an EC often functions well as a bridging asset. a stepping stone for families who may eventually aim to move into a larger or more central private condominium or even a landed property. It allows buyers to participate in private market upside progressively rather than making a large leap immediately. The main trade-off with an EC is a long holding timeline. If you purchase a brand new EC, there is typically a 3 to 4 year construction period before key collection, followed by a 5-year MOP, during which the unit must be owner occupied. This means a minimal commitment of around at least 8 to 9 years before you can actually fully exit or upgrade. ECs also come with eligibility criteria and restrictions, including income ceiling requirements, citizenship conditions, and specific financing and loan structures. In addition, matters such as bridging loans, deferred payment structures, and loan optimization are often case by case and require careful upfront planning. Because of these constraints, timing is crucial when it comes to EC purchases. So who this option suits? Upgrading to an EC is generally suitable for middle-income families with a strong intention to upgrade. Buyers with a longer time horizon who are not looking to flip in the short term, and also households that value facilities and lifestyles such as pools, playgrounds, and communal spaces for their children and family. Buyers who are comfortable committing to a 8 to 10 years timeline with flexibility to hold longer if market conditions are unfavorable. Even after reaching MOP, owners are not forced to sell immediately. They can choose to wait for better market conditions or even upgrade to private property or even right-size back to an HDB depending on their life stage and goals. Overall, an EC works best for buyers who see upgrading as a long-term journey rather than a short-term transaction. So the final option is to upgrade to a private property, which can include a condo or even a landed home. One key advantage of private property is the absence of MOP restrictions. While there is currently a seller stamp duty period of 4 years, this is different from an MOP, which offers greater flexibility in the long run. From a capital perspective, private properties have historically shown stronger appreciation trends, as we have seen earlier, especially over longer holding periods. This makes private property a common next step for households looking at asset progression and wealth building. Private properties also provide wider choices in location and product type. Fewer policy constraints compared to HDB or ECs, and also greater flexibility in future planning, whether for upgrading, right-sizing, or rental strategies. The trade-off, however, is the higher financial commitment. Upgrading to private typically requires more cash and CPF upfront, as well as higher monthly mortgage obligations. This means households need to carefully assess holding risk. A key question to ask is, if one income stream is disrupted, whether due to career changes, health reasons, or lifestyle choices, is this mortgage still sustainable? Another consideration is capital concentration. A large portion of your available funds may be channeled into a single asset, which could limit your ability to diversify into other investments such as equities, businesses, or alternative assets. This doesn't make private property a bad option, but it does require intentional planning and sufficient buffers. Who this option suits? So upgrading to a private property generally is suitable for households who have a strong or stable income or growing income, buyers with strong holding power and adequate safety nets, and those focused on long-term wealth accumulation rather than short-term flexibility. So families who are comfortable committing more capital in real estate as a core asset class. When done prudently, upgrading to private can be a strategic step forward, but it works best when aligned with cash flow, risk tolerance, and long-term goals. So after taking into account everything I've just shared, the market context, the options available, and the different pathways you can take, the next question is, how do you actually decide what's right for you? To simplify this, I've put together a mini checklist that you can use as a practical guideline when planning your purchase or upgrade. Of course, every situation is different, and I'm always happy to discuss this further in person or over Zoom to tailor the advice to your own circumstances. These are 5 key pointers I usually walk through with my clients. First, your income stability over the next 3 to 5 years. Looking at how stable your household income is likely to be. Are you expecting your income to remain similar, grow steadily, or potentially change due to job switch or career transition? Understanding this helps you assess whether a move now is sustainable over the next few years. Second, your cash and CPF runway. Beyond the initial down payment, it's important to have a buffer. I generally recommend having at least 6 months worth of savings to comfortably cover lifestyle and fixed expenses. This gives you flexibility, especially if there are changes in jobs or family plans. Third, your risk tolerance. Ask yourself how comfortable you are if the market doesn't perform exactly as expected in the short term. If prices move sideways for the next 3 to 5 years, are you okay holding the property longer? Your answer here is very important in deciding the type of move you should make. Fourth, family plans and lifestyle costs. At this stage of life, many people are planning for children or already have young kids. Expenses such as childcare, education, a car, a helper, and medical costs all add up. So these should be factored into your overall financial planning before committing to a larger property purchase. Finally, holding period. So property is not like stocks. It's not something you flip in weeks or months. You should be looking at minimally a 4 to 5 year horizon, ideally longer. I always encourage clients to see property as a long-term for savings and wealth building tool rather than a short-term trade. So this is the checklist I use to help guide my clients, whether it's deciding to upgrade now, plan for later, or stay put for the time being. So we have now come to the end of the video. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. I do read and respond to them. Do note that the content shared today is meant for educational purposes and outcomes may differ depending on individual situations. If you have found the video helpful and would like to stay updated with more market insights and property-related content, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have questions specific to your own situation, my contact details and WhatsApp QR code are on screen. You're always welcome to reach out for a one-to-one discussion. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.